I was staring at the cease and desist letter when my phone rang for the 15th time that morning. Another desperate homeowner begging me to plow their driveway before the second blizzard of the week hit Elk Ridge, Montana. The letter, printed on expensive cream-colored paper that probably cost more than my first truck, informed me that the Riverside Heights Homeowners Association had officially banned my snow removal business from operating within their community boundaries. I crumpled it up and tossed it toward the trash can, missing by a solid foot. "Marcus Eddington Snow Removal," I answered, wedging the phone between my shoulder and ear while I laced up my boots. "Marcus, thank God. This is Janet Peterson on Riverside Lane. My husband can't get out of the driveway for his dialysis appointment, and I called that new company the HOA recommended, but they said they can't come until next week. Next week. Can you please, Mrs. Peterson? I'd love to help, but your HOA president personally delivered a letter to my office this morning. Apparently, I'm banned from your neighborhood." The silence on the other end stretched for a solid 5 seconds. "They what? Ban me?" "Said my trucks are an eyesore and my business doesn't meet their aesthetic standards for approved vendors." "That's ridiculous. You've been plowing our driveways for 8 years. Who else is supposed to do it?" I pulled up my database on the computer, scrolling through the county licensing records I downloaded last month. According to the Montana Department of Transportation and the county's commercial vehicle registry, I'm the only person within a 100-mile radius who holds both a commercial snow removal license and the proper insurance certificates required by state law. The HOA can ban me all they want, but unless someone wants to drive in from Billings, which is about 200 miles away, they're out of luck. Mrs. Peterson's voice rose an octave. "Are you serious? Dead serious?" The licensing requirements changed 3 years ago after that incident, where an unlicensed operator damaged the water main on Fletcher Street. Now you need specific certifications, commercial liability insurance with minimum coverage of $2 million, and an environmental compliance certificate because of salt runoff regulations. It's expensive and time-consuming to get, which is why most small operators gave up. But what about that company the HOA recommended? Pristine Property Services or whatever. I'd already looked them up. They're a landscaping company out of Great Falls. They do lawn maintenance and gardening. No snow removal license, no proper insurance for heavy equipment operation. If they damage someone's property or, God forbid, someone gets hurt, the homeowner's liable. This is insane. Mrs. Peterson's breathing had gotten heavier. "Herbert needs to get to his appointment. Let me call you back." She hung up, and I sat back in my chair, looking around my small office above the garage. I'd built this business from nothing 12 years ago, starting with a beat-up pickup and a used plow I'd bought off Craigslist for $800. Now I had 4 trucks, 2 Bobcats, and enough equipment to handle commercial and residential jobs across half the county. Riverside Heights Homeowners Association represented about 40% of my residential income, and their timing couldn't have been worse. Right at the start of what meteorologists were predicting would be the worst winter in 30 years, my phone buzzed with a text message. Then another. Then 5 more in rapid succession. All from Riverside Heights residents, all asking variations of the same question. What were they supposed to do? I'd dealt with plenty of difficult clients over the years. Mrs. Henderson, who insisted I shovel her walkway in a specific pattern that supposedly reduced ice formation, but actually just took 3 times longer. Mr. Young, who called me at 3 in the morning if so much as an inch of snow accumulated. But I'd never dealt with an HOA president quite like Deborah Pritchard. Deborah had moved to Elk Ridge 2 years ago from California with her tech executive husband, and immediately inserted herself into every community organization she could find. Within 6 months, she'd maneuvered her way into the HOA presidency, and within a year, she'd tripled the monthly fees, implemented a Byzantine system of rules about everything from mailbox colors to approved dog breeds, and made it her personal mission to elevate the standards of Riverside Heights. I'd first run into her last winter when she'd complained that my truck's diesel engine was too loud at 6 in the morning. Never mind that I was clearing the streets so people could get to work. Her beauty sleep was apparently more important than public safety. Then she'd taken issue with the fact that I piled snow at the end of cul-de-sacs instead of hauling it away entirely, even though hauling would have tripled everyone's costs. Every interaction with her left me needing a stiff drink. The office door swung open and my brother Derek walked in, stamping snow off his boots. Just finished the McAllister job. Their whole driveway was drifted over. Took me 2 hours with the Bobcat. You see the weather report? Another 6 to 8 inches starting tonight. We've got a problem. I handed him the crumpled cease and desist letter. Derek smoothed it out, his expression darkening as he read. She can't do this. Can she do this? On paper, yeah. HOAs have the right to approve or deny vendors operating within their communities. It's in their bylaws. But you're the only licensed operator. That's not my problem, according to Deborah Pritchard and her board of cronies. Derek tossed the letter back on my desk. So what happens when nobody can get out of their driveways, when emergency vehicles can't access the streets? Just because she doesn't like the color of your trucks. I guess they figure that out the hard way. I pulled up the weather radar on my computer. The storm system moving in from the west looked nasty, a solid band of purple and red indicating heavy snowfall. Here's the thing, though. State law requires HOAs to maintain safe access to properties. If streets become impassable and someone gets hurt or dies because emergency services can't reach them, the HOA board becomes personally liable. Does Deborah know that? I'm guessing no. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found my lawyer's number. But she's about to find out. Tom Whitmore had been my attorney since I'd incorporated the business 5 years ago. He was a fishing buddy, a fellow whiskey enthusiast, and someone who genuinely enjoyed watching entitled people get what was coming to them. When I explained the situation, he actually laughed. "Oh, this is beautiful. She really banned you. In writing. Got the letter right here, signed by her and 3 board members. Marcus, my friend, you just hit the legal lottery. Keep that letter somewhere safe. Don't plow a single driveway in that neighborhood, no matter how much they beg. And when things go sideways, which they will, probably within 48 hours given that storm forecast, you call me immediately. I'm not looking to cause problems, Tom. I just want to do my job. You're not causing problems. Deborah Pritchard is. And the best way to deal with petty tyrants is to let them experience the natural consequences of their own stupidity. Trust me on this." After we hung up, Derek was grinning. "I like where this is going. Don't get ahead of yourself. People could genuinely get hurt. People could genuinely get hurt because of Deborah's decision, not yours. You tried to provide a service, she banned you, that's on her." He had a point, but it didn't make me feel better about Mrs. Peterson's husband missing his dialysis appointment, or the dozens of other residents who depended on my services for years. These weren't bad people. They were just trapped in an HOA run by someone who cared more about appearances than practicality. The snow started falling around 4 that afternoon, thick, heavy flakes that accumulated fast. By 6, we had 3 inches on the ground. By 9, it was up to 7 inches and still coming down. My phone had stopped ringing around 8, probably because word had spread that I couldn't help anyone in Riverside Heights. Instead, my email inbox filled up with messages, some understanding, some angry, some desperate. I was getting ready for bed when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Eddington, this is Deborah Pritchard." I sat down on the edge of my bed, suddenly wide awake. "Mrs. Pritchard, what can I do for you?" "I understand you've been telling residents that you're the only licensed snow removal operator in the county." Her voice had that particular tone of condescension that made my jaw clench. "I wanted to inform you that's simply not true. I've personally vetted Pristine Property Services, and they're perfectly capable of handling our needs." "Madam, Pristine Property Services doesn't hold a commercial snow removal license issued by the state of Montana. They also don't carry the required insurance coverage. If they operate heavy equipment on your streets and someone gets injured, I'm not interested in your scare tactics. I'm calling as a courtesy to inform you that if you spread any more false information about your supposed monopoly on snow removal services, the HOA will pursue legal action for defamation and tortious interference with business relationships." I took a deep breath, counting to 5. "Mrs. Pritchard, I'm not spreading false information. I'm stating facts that are publicly available through the Montana Department of Transportation. Anyone can verify. We're done here. Consider yourself warned." She hung up. I stared at my phone, then pulled up my email and forwarded the entire conversation summary to Tom, along with a recording I'd made of the call. Montana was a one-party consent state, which meant I only needed my own permission to record. Tom had taught me that particular trick after a client had tried to stiff me on a $10,000 job by claiming I'd damaged their property. His response came back in less than 5 minutes. "She's digging her own grave. Keep records of everything." The next morning, Elk Ridge woke up to 14 inches of fresh snow, with another storm system forecasted to arrive in 36 hours. I spent the day clearing out commercial clients, the supermarket parking lot, the bank, the medical center. Every job took longer than usual because the snow was heavy and wet, the kind that tested equipment and patience. Around noon, Derek called me from the hardware store job. "You need to see this." I met him at the Riverside Heights entrance 20 minutes later. A white panel van with Pristine Property Services, printed on the side in green letters, was stuck halfway up Riverside Lane, its wheels spinning uselessly in the deep snow. A guy who looked barely old enough to drink was behind the wheel, while another kid tried to shovel out the rear tires with what appeared to be a gardening spade. "They've been there for about an hour," Derek said. "Started trying to plow with a standard pickup truck and a residential-grade blade. Made it about 300 feet before they got stuck. Now they're blocking the whole street." I watched as the driver gunned the engine again, the van fishtailing before sliding sideways into a snowbank. "Where's their actual plow truck?" "That is their plow truck. I talked to them earlier. The HOA hired them for $700 to clear the entire neighborhood. They thought it would be easy money." $700. I tried to do the math in my head. Riverside Heights had 12 streets, each about a quarter-mile long, plus the main boulevard and all the cul-de-sacs. With this much snow, it would take my crew at least 8 hours with proper equipment. That wouldn't even cover their fuel costs. Hence why they're using a regular pickup with a blade they probably bought at Harbor Freight last week. A silver Mercedes pulled up behind us, and I didn't need to see the vanity plate reading HOPRES to know who was driving. Deborah Pritchard emerged wearing a white puffy coat that probably cost more than my truck payment, her highlighted blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. "What are you doing here?" She addressed me without preamble, not even acknowledging Derek. "Watching the company you hired demonstrate why licensing requirements exist." Her eyes narrowed. "If you're here to gloat, I'm here because the main county road runs past this entrance and I'm clearing it for the county. What happens in your private community isn't my concern anymore." "Good. Then you can leave." She marched past us toward the stuck van, her designer boots completely inadequate for the conditions. I watched her slip twice before reaching the vehicle, then engage in an animated conversation with the driver that involved a lot of arm waving on her part and a lot of shrugging on his. Derek nudged me. $10 says she asks you for help within the hour. No bet, but I'm not helping even if she does. We got back in our trucks and finished clearing the county road which ran along the northern edge of Riverside Heights. From that vantage point, I could see into the community. The streets were completely impassable. Several cars had gotten stuck trying to leave, abandoned at odd angles. A few residents were out trying to shovel their driveways by hand, a futile effort given the volume of snow. The pristine property services van remained stuck, now with a small crowd of angry homeowners surrounding it. My phone started ringing again as we worked. I let most calls go to voicemail, but I picked up when I saw it was Bill Matthews, a retired firefighter who lived on Cottonwood Drive in Riverside Heights. "Marcus, we've got a situation. Carla Simmons on Willow Court is having chest pains. Her husband called 911, but the ambulance can't get up the street. The snow's too deep and that damn landscaping van is blocking the main road anyway." My stomach dropped. "How bad is she?" "Bad enough that they called an ambulance. Fire department is trying to get a crew in on foot with equipment, but it's slow going." I looked at Derek, who'd clearly heard enough of the conversation to understand what was happening. He nodded. "Bill, we're 5 minutes out. We'll clear a path." "I thought the HOA banned you." "They banned my business. They didn't ban emergency services. If they want to argue about it later, they can take it up with my lawyer." I called dispatch and told them to notify the ambulance crew that we were clearing a route. Derek and I went in with both trucks, working in tandem to push the heavy snow aside. The pristine property services van was empty now, abandoned in the middle of Riverside Lane. I didn't have time to mess with moving it, so I carved a path around it, making a note of the license plate for later. Willow Court was near the back of the development, and it took us 20 minutes to cut through. The ambulance followed behind us, lights flashing. By the time we'd cleared enough space for them to reach the Simmons house, a crowd had gathered. Some residents were cheering, some were filming on their phones, and some just looked relieved. The EMTs rushed inside with their equipment while Derek and I waited, engines idling. The crowd grew larger, people emerging from their houses despite the cold. I recognized most of them, people whose driveways I'd cleared for years. Janet Peterson came over to my window. "Thank you. Herbert made it to his appointment yesterday, but only because our neighbor drove him in his truck. He's got 4-wheel drive. Glad he's okay. Deborah is going to lose her mind when she finds out you came in here. Deborah can join the line of people who are mad at me. It's getting pretty long." The EMTs emerged 15 minutes later, wheeling Carla Simmons on a gurney. She had an oxygen mask on and a Roman 4 in her arm, but she was conscious and talking, which seemed like a good sign. Her husband Carl climbed into the ambulance with her, his face pale and drawn. The ambulance started to pull away and we fell in behind it, keeping the path clear until they reached the county road. As we were finishing up, a Jeep Cherokee pulled up and Deborah Pritchard jumped out. This time she wasn't alone. She had a man with her, tall and balding, wearing an expensive suit that seemed wildly impractical for the weather. "You're trespassing," she announced, pointing at me like a prosecutor making a closing argument. "I specifically banned your company from operating here, and you violated that ban. Barry here is my attorney, and he's going to, Madam, I'm going to stop you right there." The voice came from one of the EMTs, a guy named Rodriguez who I'd met at a few community events. These gentlemen just saved a woman's life by clearing a path for emergency services. "If you want to file a complaint, you're welcome to do it through proper channels, but right now, you're interfering with emergency operations." Deborah's face flushed. "Emergency operations are over. The ambulance is gone." And this man had no right. Actually, under Montana Code Annotated Section 76-3205, any person with the equipment and ability to aid emergency services in accessing a scene has an implied right of passage, regardless of private property restrictions. Rodriguez clearly enjoyed delivering this information. It's called the Emergency Access Provision, passed in 2019 after a wildfire incident in Glacier County. The attorney, Barry, shifted uncomfortably. "That statute applies to natural disasters, and blizzard conditions qualify as a natural disaster, counselor. Check the Montana Supreme Court ruling in Henderson v. Mountain View HOA, 2021. Similar situation. HOA tried to restrict emergency access. Court didn't look kindly on it." I made a mental note to buy Rodriguez a beer next time I saw him off duty. Deborah looked like she was about to explode, her face turning a shade of red that couldn't be healthy. "This isn't over," she said, directing her fury at me. "You're in violation of a legally binding agreement with this HOA, and we will pursue damages." "Madam, I don't have any agreement with your HOA. My business has never signed a vendor contract with Riverside Heights. I've operated here based on individual agreements with homeowners. Your ban letter was the first official communication I've ever received from your organization." Barry, the attorney, looked concerned now. He leaned over and whispered something to Deborah, who shook her head violently. "I don't care what the technicalities are. He's not welcome here, and if he comes back, I'll have him arrested for trespassing." "On whose authority?" The question came from behind her. We all turned to see Sheriff Mike Corrigan pulling up in his department SUV. "Because last I checked, Deborah, you don't have arrest powers, and this is still America." Mike and I went way back. His daughter was in the same grade as my niece, and we'd coached their soccer team together for 3 seasons. He was also the kind of cop who didn't have much patience for people who wasted his time with petty nonsense. "Sheriff, this man was explicitly banned from our community, and he came in anyway. That's trespassing." Mike looked at me, then at the path we'd cleared, then back at Deborah. "I got a call about 30 minutes ago from emergency dispatch. They said an ambulance couldn't access a patient because the streets in this neighborhood were impassable. They also said Marcus here cleared a path so they could get through. That about sum it up." "Yes, but so you're telling me you want me to arrest the man who made it possible for emergency services to save someone's life?" Mike crossed his arms. "Lady, I've been doing this job for 22 years, and that might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard." He was banned. "We have legal grounds. You have an HOA, not a sovereign nation. These are still public streets maintained with county resources, and emergency access laws supersede your neighborhood rules. If you'd like to file a formal complaint, you can come down to the station and fill out the paperwork. But I'm not arresting anyone today except maybe you, if you keep interfering with snow removal operations that the county desperately needs." Deborah looked at her attorney, who seemed to be doing his best to disappear into his own coat. "We'll be filing complaints with multiple agencies," she said. "The county commissioners, the business licensing board, you do that." Mike turned to me. Marcus, you good here? All good, Sheriff. Just finishing up. Appreciate what you did today. That's twice this winter you've helped out in emergency situations. He gave Deborah one last look. Madam, I suggest you figure out your snow removal situation before the next storm hits. Because if I get another call about blocked emergency access in this neighborhood, the county attorney is going to start asking questions about HOA liability. He drove off, leaving Deborah and Barry standing in the snow. I could see her jaw working, trying to come up with some response, but nothing came out. Finally, she stormed back to her Jeep, Barry following like a scolded puppy. Derek pulled up next to me. That was satisfying. That was necessary. But we're still banned from here, and she's going to make this as difficult as possible. So, what do? We document everything. We don't step foot in here unless it's an actual emergency, and we let Tom handle the legal side. I looked around at the neighborhood, at the snow-covered streets and the residents watching from their windows. And we get ready for the next storm, because this is far from over. That night, the story hit social media. Someone had filmed the entire confrontation with Deborah and posted it to the Elk Ridge Community Facebook group, a page with about 4,000 members representing most of the town's population. By midnight, it had 300 shares and 500 comments. The overwhelming sentiment was anti-Deborah, with people calling her everything from incompetent to dangerous. I tried to stay out of it, but Derek sent me screenshots of the best comments. One from Susan Williams said, "Maybe instead of banning the only qualified snow removal operator, the HOA should focus on, I don't know, removing snow." Another from Todd Breckman read, "Deborah Pritchard cares more about her aesthetic standards than whether we can literally survive the winter. Time for a recall election." That last comment sparked a whole thread about HOA recall procedures and whether enough homeowners could be rallied to remove Deborah from her position. I read through it with a mixture of hope and skepticism. HOA politics were notoriously difficult to change because most people didn't pay attention until something directly affected them. I was just closing my laptop when Tom called. "Have you seen the video?" "Unfortunately, yes." "Marcus, this is better than I could have imagined. She threatened to have you arrested for saving someone's life. The sheriff publicly contradicted her. This is documented gold. Tom, I'm not trying to destroy this woman. I just want to plow some driveways. And you will. But first, we need to make it clear that what she did was not only wrong but potentially criminal. I'm drafting a letter to the HOA board citing specific statutes about emergency access, duty of care, and personal liability. I'm also going to send a copy to every homeowner in Riverside Heights. Is that legal? It's public information and community service. They deserve to know that their HOA president's decisions are putting them at risk. Some of them might have legal grounds to sue the HOA for breach of duty if her actions have caused them damages, like missed work or medical appointments. This is going to get ugly. It's already ugly. We're just making sure everyone sees it clearly. The next morning, I woke up to find my email inbox flooded with messages from Riverside Heights residents. Most were supportive, thanking me for helping with the emergency. A few were contract requests, people asking me to clear their driveways despite the ban. I had to reply to each one explaining that I couldn't without risking legal action from the HOA, but I appreciated their support. Around 10 in the morning, Bill Matthews called. "Marcus, we're organizing a special HOA meeting tonight. Emergency session to discuss the snow removal situation and potentially call for a vote of no confidence in the current board. How many people are backing this? We need 20% of homeowners to call for a special meeting. We've got signatures from 32% as of this morning. People are furious. Half the neighborhood couldn't get to work yesterday. 3 people missed important medical appointments. One family's pipes burst because they couldn't get a plumber to access their house. This is a disaster. When's the meeting? 7 tonight at the community center. You should come. I don't think that's a good idea. Deborah already wants my head on a platter. Which is exactly why you should come. People need to hear from you directly. They need to understand the licensing situation and what their options are. I thought about it. Tom would probably tell me to stay away, but he might also see the value in public education. Let me talk to my attorney. I'll let you know. Tom surprised me by enthusiastically supporting the idea. You go, you stay calm and professional, and you answer questions honestly. Don't attack Deborah directly, just present the facts. Let the homeowners draw their own conclusions. And if she tries to have me removed, it's a public meeting called by the homeowners. She can't legally prevent you from attending as long as you're not disruptive. Besides, I'll be there with you. You're coming, wouldn't miss it. This is the most fun I've had in years. The community center was packed when we arrived at 6:45. Every seat was full and people were standing along the walls. I recognized most of the faces. Years of early morning snow clearing creating a familiarity, even if I didn't know everyone's names. The mood was tense, lots of crossed arms and serious expressions. Deborah sat at a table at the front with 3 other board members. Richard Stokes, the vice president, Patricia Chen, the secretary, and Tom Burnett, the treasurer. All 4 looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Barry, the attorney, was there too, sitting off to the side with a yellow legal pad. Bill Matthews stood up as the meeting started. This emergency session has been called by petition of 42 homeowners, representing 32% of the community. According to our bylaws, that's sufficient to require the board to address specific concerns. Tonight's concern is the current snow removal situation and the board's decision to ban Marcus Eddington's company from operating in Riverside Heights. Deborah banged a gavel, which seemed unnecessarily dramatic. This meeting is out of order. The board makes vendor decisions, not the general membership. We don't need to justify, actually. According to Article 7, Section 3 of the HOA bylaws, any board decision that affects community safety can be challenged by membership petition. This came from an older woman I didn't recognize, who was reading from a thick binder. I'm Helen Kowalski. I've served on 3 different HOA boards in my lifetime, and I know the rules. This meeting is perfectly legitimate. Deborah's face tightened, but she nodded. Fine, but we're going to conduct this professionally. Who wants to speak first? Hands shot up around the room. Deborah pointed to Janet Peterson. I want to know why you banned the only licensed snow removal operator in the county right before the worst winter in decades. My husband nearly missed his dialysis because of your decision. That's not aesthetic standards. That's dangerous. We banned Mr. Eddington because his equipment doesn't meet our community standards, and we found an alternative vendor who got stuck in the snow after 300 feet and abandoned their van in the middle of the street. This from a younger guy in the back. I had to walk 2 miles to the county road yesterday because I couldn't get my car out. I missed a crucial meeting with a client, cost me a $15,000 contract. More hands went up. More stories poured out. A nurse who couldn't get to her shift at the hospital. An elderly couple who ran out of their medications. A mother whose child had an asthma attack and they had to carry him through waist-deep snow to reach a neighbor's truck. The complaints went on for 20 minutes, each one more damning than the last. Finally, Deborah held up her hand. I understand everyone's frustrated, but these are temporary inconveniences. We're actively working on finding a qualified replacement. There is no replacement. Bill Matthews was standing now, his voice carrying across the room. That's what people are trying to tell you. Marcus is the only operator with the proper licensing, and before you argue, maybe we should hear from him directly. All eyes turned to me. I felt my palms sweat as I stood up, very aware of Tom next to me silently encouraging me. I'm Marcus Eddington. Most of you know me. I've been clearing your driveways for about 8 years now. I don't want to make this contentious, but people deserve to understand the situation. I took a breath. 3 years ago, Montana changed the requirements for commercial snow removal operators. You now need a state-issued license that requires passing a written test, demonstrating equipment competency, and maintaining specific insurance coverage. The insurance alone costs me about $40,000 a year because it covers property damage, personal injury, and environmental compliance. I pulled out some papers Tom had prepared. I'm the only operator in this county who holds that license. The nearest licensed operator is in Billings, about 200 miles away. I called them yesterday. They're completely booked, and even if they weren't, they charge triple my rates because of travel distance. What about Pristine Property Services? Patricia Chen asked, looking genuinely curious rather than combative. They're a landscaping company. Great at what they do in spring and summer, but they don't have the license or insurance for winter operations. If their equipment damages your property or someone gets hurt, your homeowner's insurance likely won't cover it because they'll argue you hired an unlicensed operator. That can't be right. Deborah stood up. I personally verified their credentials. Did you check with the Montana Department of Transportation? Because that's where snow removal licenses are registered. Did you verify their insurance coverage includes heavy equipment operation and meets the state minimum of $2 million? Did you confirm they have environmental compliance certificates for chemical de-icing? Her silence was answer enough. Tom stood up beside me. I'm Tom Whitmore, representing Mr. Eddington. I've prepared packets for everyone that detail the relevant statutes, licensing requirements, and potential liability issues. What's most important for homeowners to understand is this. If your HOA board's decisions result in blocked emergency access or preventable harm, board members can be held personally liable. Not the HOA's insurance, not the community's general fund. Your personal assets. That got everyone's attention, especially the board members. Richard Stokes actually paled. Is that true? Completely true. Montana case law is very clear on this. Henderson v. Mountain View HOA, 2021. The board president was found personally liable for damages when their decisions blocked emergency access. She lost her house settling the judgment. You're using scare tactics. Deborah's voice was sharp, but I could hear uncertainty underneath. I'm citing legal precedent. Your attorney can verify everything I'm saying. Tom looked at Barry, who suddenly became very interested in his legal pad. The fact is, you made a decision that has put your community at risk. The question now is what you do about it. Bill Matthews spoke up again. I move that we take an immediate vote to overturn the ban on Marcus Eddington's snow removal company and reinstate his access to the community. Second, came from multiple people simultaneously. Deborah looked at her attorney, who whispered something to her. She shook her head. The board hasn't had time to properly review. People's lives are at stake. Helen Kowalski was standing now. I watched emergency responders struggle to reach a woman having a heart attack because your pride couldn't handle admitting you made a mistake. Call the vote, Deborah. The room erupted in agreement, people calling out for the vote. Deborah banged her gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order, but the crowd wasn't having it. Finally, Richard Stokes leaned over and said something to her. She listened, her expression getting darker, then nodded. Fine. We'll take a vote. All in favor of overturning the vendor ban on Eddington snow removal, raise your hand. A forest of hands went up, easily more than 3/4 of the room. Deborah didn't even bother asking for opposition. Motion passes. Mr. Eddington, you're welcome to resume operations in Riverside Heights. She said it like the words physically hurt her. The room broke into applause. People came over to shake my hand, thank me, apologize for the hassle. Janet Peterson was crying, hugging her husband. Bill Matthews clapped me on the shoulder hard enough to bruise. But I was watching Deborah, who sat at the front table looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her attorney was packing up his briefcase quickly, clearly wanting to get out of there. The other board members were already fielding questions from residents, distancing themselves from the decision. Tom leaned over to me. You should make the first move. Kill her with kindness. I walked up to the front table. Deborah saw me coming and stiffened, but she didn't run. Mrs. Pritchard, I know tonight was difficult. I want you to know I don't hold any grudges. I'd like to get back to serving this community the way I have been. She stared at me for a long moment. I thought she might apologize, might acknowledge the mistake. Instead, she said, I still think your trucks are an eyesore, then walked away. Tom whistled low. Some people just can't help themselves. The next week was chaos. The forecasted storm hit right on schedule, dumping another 18 inches of snow on Elk Ridge. My crew worked around the clock, clearing Riverside Heights along with our other clients. The residents were effusively grateful, pressing coffee and cookies on us, offering bonuses they couldn't really afford. I turned down the bonuses but accepted the coffee. Deborah made herself scarce. I didn't see her once during that week, which was unusual because she was normally the type to be everywhere, supervising everything. The gossip I heard through clients was that she'd holed up in her house, refusing to come to the door or answer calls. On Saturday morning, I was finishing up a driveway on Riverside Lane when Patricia Chen flagged me down. Marcus, do you have a minute? We sat in her living room, warming up with hot chocolate. I wanted to apologize on behalf of the board. We should have done our research before voting to support Deborah's ban. Richard and Tom and we just assumed she knew what she was doing. Everyone makes mistakes. This was more than a mistake. This was negligence. We're calling for a special election to replace the board. I'm not running again, and neither are Richard or Tom. We've learned our lesson about rubber stamping decisions. What about Deborah? Patricia's expression darkened. Deborah is facing a recall petition. If it succeeds, she'll be removed from the board entirely. Between you and me, it's going to succeed. People are furious with her. I felt a twinge of something, not quite sympathy but recognition that Deborah's world was falling apart. Look, I don't want to ruin anyone's life. I just want to do my job. I know. And that's exactly why people trust you and don't trust her. You care about the community. She cares about control. Patricia set down her mug. There's something else you should know. We've been going through the HOA's financial records and there are some irregularities. Money that should be in the reserve fund isn't there. Contracts with vendors that seem overpriced. We've contacted an accountant to do a full audit. You think she's been embezzling. I think something's not right, and we have a duty to find out what. If there's fraud, we'll report it to the authorities. I left Patricia's house feeling uneasy. Financial fraud was serious, way more serious than a misguided vendetta against my business. If Deborah had been stealing from the HOA, she'd face criminal charges. 2 weeks later, the audit results came back. The accountant found that over the past 18 months, Deborah had approved contracts worth nearly $200,000 to various vendors, many of them companies that either didn't exist or were shell corporations. The money had been funneled through a complex series of transactions, but ultimately it had ended up in accounts controlled by Deborah and her husband. The HOA board filed a police report. Sheriff Corrigan assigned Detective Lisa Hernandez to the case, and she worked quickly. Within a week, she traced the shell companies back to Deborah's husband, who apparently had a history of financial fraud in California, which was why they'd moved to Montana in the first place. The arrests happened on a Monday morning. I was clearing the medical center parking lot when Derek called. "You're not going to believe this. They just arrested Deborah and her husband, fraud, embezzlement, and something about money laundering." I felt my stomach drop. How much did they take? Rumors are saying close to $300,000 once they totaled everything up. The HOA's basically bankrupt. The story dominated the local news for days. It turned out the Pritchards had run similar schemes in 2 other states before coming to Montana. Deborah's obsession with control and appearance wasn't just personality, it was cover for the fraud. By keeping everyone focused on minor rule violations and aesthetic standards, she distracted from the fact that she was systematically looting the HOA's accounts. The legal process moved surprisingly fast. Both Pritchards were denied bail, considered flight risks given their history. The prosecution offered a plea deal. Deborah would serve 6 years in state prison and pay full restitution. Her husband got 8 years. Their assets, including their house in Riverside Heights, would be seized and sold to help repay the stolen money. I watched it all unfold with a mix of vindication and sadness. Deborah had caused real harm to people, not just through the snow removal ban, but through systematically stealing from her neighbors. And yet, I couldn't help but think about how differently things might have gone if she'd just been willing to admit she was wrong about the ban. The new HOA board, elected in a special vote with record turnout, was everything the old one wasn't. They were transparent about finances, responsive to concerns, and practical about community needs. Their first official act was to pass a resolution thanking me for my service and formally apologizing for the ban. Bill Matthews became the new president. One of his first calls was to my office. "Marcus, we want to do something for you. After everything you went through, and then helping expose the fraud by forcing the board meeting, you deserve recognition." "Bill, I don't need recognition. I'm just glad things are back to normal." "Too bad. We're naming the new community park after you. Well, sort of. We're calling it Snowplow Park, and we're putting up a plaque thanking you for keeping the community safe during the crisis." I tried to argue, but he wouldn't hear it. 3 months later, on a bright spring day when the last of the snow had finally melted, they held a dedication ceremony. Half the neighborhood showed up. Kids were playing on the new playground equipment, people were barbecuing, and someone had made a cake decorated with a fondant snowplow. Tom came with his family, as did Derek and his wife. Sheriff Corrigan stopped by in uniform, making a point to shake my hand in front of everyone. "You did good work this winter, Marcus. Not just the plowing, but standing up for what was right." I was just trying to do my job. Sometimes that's exactly what's needed. Someone who cares more about doing things right than about being right. As the sun set and the party wound down, I stood by the plaque they'd installed near the park entrance. It read, "Snowplow Park. Dedicated to Marcus Eddington and all those who put service above ego and community above personal interest. Winter 2025-2026. Janet Peterson came over, Herbert beside her in his wheelchair. We never properly thanked you." If you hadn't fought that ban, if emergency services couldn't have gotten through, I don't know what would have happened to Herbert or to Carla Simmons. I'm glad I could help. It was more than help. You stood up to a bully when everyone else was too scared. That matters. I drove home that evening thinking about the whole bizarre situation. An HOA president's ego and greed had nearly caused a disaster. A community had come together to fix the problem. Justice, slow and imperfect as it was, had been served. And somehow, in the middle of it all, I'd just been trying to plow some driveways. The next winter came right on schedule, and with it, the snow. But this time, when the first flakes fell, I got calls from a newly reformed Riverside Heights HOA with a properly vetted contract, appropriate payment terms, and a board that actually understood what they were hiring me to do. I pulled on my boots, fired up the truck, and headed out into the white morning. The roads were empty, the snow was falling fast, and somewhere out there, people were depending on me to keep their streets clear and their community safe. It was exactly where I wanted to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. Sometimes the simplest job in the world turns into the most complicated mess imaginable, but in the end, if you stick to your principles and do good work, things have a way of working out. Deborah Pritchard was serving her sentence at Montana Women's Prison. The restitution payments would probably take decades to complete, if they ever were. The community she tried to control had moved on without her, stronger and more united than before, and me. I was still just a guy with a snowplow, trying to help people get to work in the morning. Some jobs don't need to be more complicated than that. The sun was coming up over the mountains as I finished the first street, the plow throwing up waves of white powder, the diesel engine humming its familiar rhythm. My phone buzzed with the next address, and then the next, a full day of work ahead of me. I put the truck in gear and moved forward, cutting a clean path through the snow, leaving clear road behind me. It was honest work, good work, and after everything that had happened, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.